will you see the backlash that, to this point, Congress has faced? Will that be targeted towards the Supreme Court?
It's hard to tell. I mean, here is Obama saying that Judge Vinson's ruling is judicial activism. You know, something that you hear more from the political right than the political left. This complaint of judicial activism. Well, if it's judicial activism to strictly interpret something, you know, in a constructionalist point of view, I think we're all in trouble.
Well, I can't wait to see how it plays out. I'm hoping against hope that they stick to the intention of the Constitution, and they rule that you can't do this, that this is unconstitutional. But we've seen stranger things in the past, and there's no guarantee.
The expansion of the Commerce Clause, this steady expansion. I mean, there's this case. I wish I could remember. It was a few weeks ago, a month ago. The ruling, and Scalia and Thomas were the only dissenters. And Scalia's writing, he spoke to the way that the ruling had moved, you know, had moved Commerce Clause even more open. You know, was removing all of the limits on federal power by taking these steps, and it's pretty much of a telling thing, because if you look at the history as these rulings come through, I mean the Filburn case, the Reich case, the federal government is assuming larger and larger powers over the American people on really kind of dubious grounds. You know, the idea that the preamble of the Constitution says, you know, for life, liberty, and you know, all this stuff. You know, it's general welfare. You know, the general welfare clause, that kind of deal.
Promote the general welfare. Yeah.
You know, it's obscene for the people to say, because it's gonna leave the Constitution a dead letter. Whereas when the ratification came and we had the Bill of Rights, Patrick Henry celebrated because he thought the Bill of Rights rendered the federal Constitution a dead letter and made, you know, really constrained the federal power. You know, over 200 years later, we've wedged it, and it's the other way, where now Commerce Clause can very really has a chance to render any limitation on federal power a dead letter.
What you have is, like I said, what constructionists' views on that. They look at the precedents, and the moment that one court gets it wrong, it sets a precedence to be wrong from that point on. No one they won't go back to the original intent and say, well, you know, this court got it wrong. Well, but it's our opportunity to correct it. Instead, they just compound it by going back and say, well, yeah, like separation of church and state with Hugo Black. Okay, yeah, all right, well, he ruled this way, so we're going to take it from that point and go forward. When actually you need to go back to the beginning, and you'll find out that Judge Black was wrong in his decision. And that's
right.
One of the things that we find, and so it's very difficult to make the changes because the Supreme Court just will not go back on themselves.
It's extremely difficult for the court to overturn a previous court, and Roberts recently made that statement that you know, in the face of new evidence, or because a lot of times these courts, the court's going to make a decision based on prevailing theory. You know, there's all this scholarship that goes into these cases and these you know, amicus briefs and all these all the, you know, legal wrangling. Huge amounts of it are based on theory and what we know. Well, when you another 30 years goes down the line and people's theories turn out to be false, you know, or you know, seriously flawed, the court, you know, has a duty to go back and address those wrongs, address the fact that they have ruled on dubious theory.
Yeah, it's something that they won't do, and you know, part of it's credibility. They like the perception that they are correct, and that the Supreme Court in general is not wrong, even when they are. And that's why a lot of times they won't go back. They don't want to go back and reopen it. They don't want to go back and look at it, and they really don't want to face the possibility of overturning a previous ruling.
And it's sometimes the cases, the previous rulings of what's like the Second Amendment right, the Marshall case, where the court kind of looks at that and goes, we don't know where that court based their ruling. It was kind of like they were judging from the hip. So we're going to ignore it on our future rulings in these cases.
Yeah. I say they should all go back to the original intent. You need to go back to those notes on the debate. Everything you need is in there. Go back to the Federalist Papers, and that's where you really need to find your justification, as opposed to looking at a ruling from the 1950s. You need to go back to the notes from the 1780s. I think if they just stuck with that, I think we'd all be in a better place.
Yeah, but when half of the population thinks that the Constitution is this living, breathing, organic document that changes with the times, that swells and shrinks depending on the humidity in the air.
Yeah, no, it's designed that it can be modified, it can be changed, and it can evolve into something through the amendment process. We really haven't seen many amendments, and mostly we've seen just usurpation of the power, of the authority, and just complete denial that the Constitution is even relevant. The Congress doesn't even ask, is it constitutional? Here's a clip I have of the new speaker in the Florida House. And that was one of the things that he was challenging this new state legislature. That instead of looking for government to solve problems or wishing we had more money to solve problems, he's challenging them to go back and ask the question, should government be doing this at all? Do we have the authority to do this? And I thought it was great to hear it from someone who's actually up there, and he's been there since 2002. So it was really nice to hear someone speaking in those terms who was up in the legislature. It was great. It made me feel good. It made my day.
Well, and maybe that's the reality is that we're coming back. There's an ebb and flow in history, and the government power will the pendulum moves from one side to the other, and maybe we're on a trajectory now where people are they're sick of expanded federal power, and they want government to be local and accountable.
Yeah, I think exactly right. Take a look at the ratings that Fox News gets compared to the other, talking heads, those other stations that are on cable. Fox probably has a bigger rating than all the rest of them combined. And most of Fox's audience and their commentators are all talking in the same language. They're all with the Tea Party, they're all with the movement, and they want to see less government, less spending. They're all wanting to go back to the founding documents and stick to it, as opposed to the progressive stuff we've had over the last 90 years, 100 years. So I think the mood of the nation really reflects in those kind of ratings. When a station like Fox gets those kind of ratings, it's not a minority of the people who are speaking out. It's the majority that are speaking out. I think that's what you're hearing now. I think that's what that Tea Party is. So those who try and belittle that movement and say, well, they'll go away, but they're not going away. And you see it reflected in other things in our society.